I came to the realization watching the show that the movie was incredibly campy. I felt like it didn't take the premise of he's a demigod, he's getting this lightning bolt to stop, the end of the world,
Yeah.
and he's saving his mom. Like, I feel like it didn't take that seriously at all.
No.
So,
It was just like, we're going to hell.
yeah, this
Highway to
highway to
hell.
hell,
Here's horny Rosario Dawson. Here's 3 dogs instead of Cerberus.
it's literally like it's so refreshing.
This is
Like
what
it gives
happens.
it the weight it needs to
Yeah.
get us to buy into the story.
It
Because on
doesn't.
a surface level, it is a crazy idea for a story,
Yeah.
but it becomes good when your story, whatever medium you're telling it in, takes it seriously. That's
You
what you really need.
wow, theme music. Bringing it back, baby. Reduce, reuse,
Classic.
recycle. I'm using the same background as the last Percy Jackson video we did.
I'm reporting live from Mount Olympus.
Welcome to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. I'm Cullen.
And I'm Hannah. And we also talk about
Media,
shows, I
shows,
guess.
video games, concepts.
In this case, we are actually talking about a show. And you know what? You guys should feel really special
Mhm.
because we're like, oh, we're not doing a show. But I think doing this show, which is Percy Jackson,
Yes.
uh, is actually going to be beneficial because so refreshing from the movie. So I'm actually
So,
kind of glad we're doing it.
yeah, I am too. I'm enjoying watching the show. Yeah, we said we're gonna do shows. You guys asked in the comment section and Dance Monkey Dance. We are watching the show and talking about it. Thank you for all the comments and views on
Mm.
Percy Jackson. That was a very fun video to make because that movie is bad and it is people do enjoy to watching people hate things. So as much
Yeah.
as we try and be a very positive space,
Mm-hmm.
some movies
Sometimes
aren't
the
good.
movie doesn't give you the space to be positive.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, it did have Poker Face and TikTok by Kesha, so but no so
what a
yesterday.
but no, this show, you know what? Actually, I take it back. The show is unwatchable. There's no mirrored back iPhone.
Oh,
Unwatchable.
on
Completely unwatchable.
yeah. Disgusting. It's like
Disgusting.
the vine of
Yeah.
the cowgirl was disgusting. I
Disgusting.
think of that all the time at work
Yeah.
and no one understands me. I'm Holden Caulfield. So
Ah.
all right, so yeah, we're doing a little bonus app. We're talking about some Percy Jackson, the TV show. We're doing this in 2 parts because as
Mhm.
of recording, the whole series is not released, and we had some space before Supernatural Romance Month. So we're talking about episodes 1 through 4, and next episodes will be 5 through 8. It's a new Disney Plus original show created by Jonathan E. Steinberg and Rick Riordan, Daddy Riordan, author of the Percy Jackson series. He wrote 3 episodes. He was very involved. This is
Mm.
very much the opposite of the movie. It is, in a way, a pretty direct adaptation.
Yeah.
There are definitely
And
changes, but I read the book fairly recently, and I'm like, yeah, this is
yeah,
yeah.
you can tell that unlike the other show, he was involved because he clearly loves his book series and he cares a lot about the characters in the world. And that care, you can feel it, you can see it. It's
Hmm.
great. So glad that he got to be involved.
It very much, I would say, on an adaptation level, with if Percy Jackson, the Logan Lerman 2010 movie, or Pinocchio, a true story with Pauly Shore are a one, and like Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe are a 9, and then like a BBC miniseries is like a 10, like BBC 8 Hour Pride and Prejudice is like a 10 if we're talking adaptational directness. I
Mhm.
would put this at a 9, like with Narnia
Mm.
and Lord of the Rings, where it's like, yeah, this is the same story, the same, just some minor updates, some tweaks that really only help adapt the story to the new medium and upgrade the story in a way that doesn't feel like pandering, but feels like just like, oh, it grew. Like as a writer, as a writer myself, like whenever I write something and I go back to it later, there's always something you want to tweak. So
Mhm.
it very much like those kind of tweaks. Speaking of opinions and adaptation, by now our I'm wearing pink. It's a Wednesday. So our Mean Girls guest appearance on Life's But a Song will
Oh
be
yeah.
out. Such a fun time. So many things we missed. Like we forgot to talk about the iCarly in French bit
I don't know how we forgot that.
because
We
I
were so
died.
focused on
Like the core
being
characters. Yeah,
serious. We were being very serious
we
with our
were.
analysis. We were like, "Oh my god, you remember that moment?"
But like the moment
Yeah.
where Gretchen makes the Spotify playlist of like this is what you missed, and one of them is This Is Leah Michelle.
Oh my god, yes.
I know.
Check out Life's But a Song. They're on pretty much all the platforms.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They
go listen to that
be
episode.
making content. Like if it's a musical, there is an episode about it. Sometimes two. So they'll do second chance theater.
Yeah. And also, speaking of Greek mythology, we also did a crossover with John where we talked about Hercules. So we talked the plot and themes and lore here. We talked music over there. So you have 3 episodes featuring John that you can watch, 2 on his podcast, 1 here.
Yeah.
Go check it out.
If you want to hear our opinions on Star is Born, the song, not the one with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga or Judy Garland or every other actress that's ever been, check out our crossover where we're talking about the music of Hercules. Our actors.
For Percy Jackson, the show.
Yes, the show. Back to the topic at hand. We got Walker Scobell as Percy, Virginia Cull as Sally, Leah Jeffries as Annabeth, Aryan Simhadri as Grover, Jason Matsoukas as Mr. D, Charlie Bushnell as Luke, Jessica Parker Kennedy as Medusa, Megan Mullally as Electo, Lynn Turman as Chiron, Dior Goodjohn as Clarisse, and Tim Sharp as Gabe Ugliano.
I didn't know that that was Gabe's last name, and it's literally just ugly, like in it.
Yeah,
So,
it's fitting.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So these
great cast, diverse cast, which I know people were complaining that Annabeth was supposed to be blonde. And
who
it's
cares?
who cares, and especially the how that plays into is she feels like blondes are underestimated. And it's like who's I didn't say this take, I saw this somewhere else, but it's just true. They're like, who's more underestimated than a black woman? Like they're very
Yeah,
underestimated in many parts of society. So it's like, yeah, it tracks. Like nothing was lost.
no. In fact, a lot was gained. Like
Yes.
the cast is very diverse in terms of not just like race and ethnicity, but also like abilities. Because
Yeah.
we do have a character who's sort of in the background who's in a wheelchair. So that's really
They're an
awesome to
archer,
see.
aren't they?
Literally a
Yeah.
heroic archer. And
Yeah.
it's great. Also, like a lot of the characters are kids. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they're probably like 15, 16 now, but like they look like 12-year-olds. They're supposed
Yeah.
to be like 12, 13.
They did
So
not age
yeah,
them up
no.
like the 2010 movie. I keep wanting to say the Logan Lerman movie, but I do like Logan Lerman and I don't
Yeah,
want
we shouldn't place all of that on him. It's not
yeah.
his fault.
Yeah, don't put
He
that on my
was
Charlie.
okay.
We are infinite. Uh
Cringe. Uh
okay. So we're not doing like a full lore thing because we went over so much of the Percy Jackson lore and the book to movie changes in the Percy Jackson episode we did with Overly Sarcastic Productions, which was a dream come true. We've been big fans. Like I've been a big fan of them for a long
yeah.
time. So it was so fun to meet them and cross over with them. So thank you to Red. But yeah, we went into a lot of depth, so we're just
Yes.
gonna do a quickest. That was a quick touch up of Greek mythology, and that we're doing an even quicker thing. So what is a
Mhm.
god? Okay. Um,
We're starting all the way at the top.
So we have a big element of Percy Jackson is the Perseus and Medusa story, which we're also not going to get fully into because an iconic movie, Clash of the Titans, which I do want to cover someday. There's multiple versions of that, and that is the Perseus story. So that's when
Mhm.
we're really going to delve into like my 10th grade Halloween costume. Maybe it was 7th grade,
Those are very different ages.
different ages. Yeah, I was thinking, wait, no, I was trying to be cool then. I was the kid from Sky High, but so cool. But in you can see on our Instagram the Medusa head my
Yeah.
mom made. Uh
It's great.
yeah. They actually used that as casting inspiration for this. They were like, who
Uh-huh.
captures the energy of this ball of foam that's decorated with felt?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's two stories of Medusa. The most common one was that she was a monster born of monsters, born of sea gods, just kind of like a creepy crawly.
Mhm.
But then Ovid gave us the much more like literary and compelling origin story that she was a beautiful woman who was cursed by Athena to be so ugly and repulsive because she either, depending on your translation, and that's a whole translation thing that we hit, like either
Mhm.
Poseidon raped or had sex with her in Athena's temple, desecrating the temple, and so she was cursed
By
uh,
Athena.
by Athena. I did hear once, I think this was just an error. Someone was like, oh, she was cursed by Aphrodite for being too beautiful. And I'm
Mm.
like, well, how come in the Hercules Disney TV show, Lisa Kudrow's Aphrodite is helping Medusa then? So, you know. So there's also references to, because he's named Perseus, to Perseus's origin story, where Perseus and his mom were cast into the sea in a trunk after Zeus impregnated her as a shower of gold. And you know what? I know you people wearing yellow bandanas at kink events. That's not the golden shower I'm talking about. So they were cast into the sea in a trunk to be drowned by her asshole dad. Uh, and they survived. And Perseus would go on to defend and protect his mother. And he does kill Medusa because he's sent to protect his mother. And he uses her head as a weapon to save the Princess Andromeda, daughter of Cassiopeia. Astrology girlies, they're in the sky. To protect that Andromeda was going to be a sacrifice to a sea monster and to the sea gods, and the monster was going to eat her. And then he turned the monster to stone, saved Andromeda. They got married. And
Yay.
then happily ever after, his big divine punishment was he accidentally killed his asshole grandpa. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
boo hoo. Like, yeah, there's a reason I agree with Percy's mom. He is like, if you're gonna name your kid after a Greek hero, he has a very standard hero's journey that I think,
He's, I mean, when I was doing a little bit of the research, that someone was talking about like this is a story of like bravery and intellect and like integrity. And I'm like, all right, I get it. Like that's
yeah,
a good reason to name your child that.
when you read about
Or
Hercules or Theseus, they don't really have that same classic hero's journey,
yeah,
you know.
or like a friend of the pod, Katie said she was at the grocery store last week and a mom was calling her little boy Percy and then called him Perseus. And I'm like, oh yeah, she
Yeah,
definitely named him after these books.
yeah. I was like, is there a feud now between Perseus and Sir Percival from the Knights of the Round Table about who
Oh, yeah.
Percy
Who
is?
would really name their kid Percival? I
Percival.
mean, probably British people.
I think Percival was very effeminate, if I remember.
Mm,
But that like the way in King Arthur when they referred to a knight being effeminate, it was like they are like so chaste and pure, almost like they're a girl. And it's like,
that's really
is he
funny.
just gay then? Is he
Right.
trans? Is he? It's like, what's going on? Honestly, I want a round table. I want like the Barbenheimer one that had Margot Robbie and Cillian Murphy. I want that with Sir Percival and Perseus.
Oh
They
my
talk about
God.
their heroic journeys. Because in some versions he gets the Holy Grail, but then eventually that just became Galahad's deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm.
We'll get to King Arthur someday. That is a lot to unpack. We also in this show, we have the Kidna, the primordial mother of monsters, who was with Typhon, enemy of the gods. She and multiple multi-headed creature children. Cerberus, the three-headed doggo that guards the gates of Hades. Did you write
Mhm.
doggo, Hannah?
I did write doggo.
You're outing me as a millennial. Yeah.
I was gonna I was gonna write the three-headed good boy, but then I was like, I mean, technically he's a bad boy, but still good boy.
It's a good boy. Okay, she's also possibly the mother of the Chimera, part lion, part goat, snake-headed tail, according to Hesiod's Theogony, which I read once. A little dry,
Mm,
gonna be real. Um,
yeah.
the use of the pronouns is a little fuzzy.
Apparently it's likely that she was the mother chimera, but there's also like translations where it's like, oh well, maybe this she pronoun refers to somebody else. So
She also possible mother of the Sphinx. We saw one in Gods of Egypt, head of a
yeah.
woman, body of a winged lion, teller of riddles. From
Mhm.
Oedipus. Have you seen the TikTok series about a baby named Oedipus?
No.
It's so hysterical. It's one
Okay.
TikTok, but
I
this
don't. Oh, it's one TikTok, but it's a TikTok series.
because she films it over multiple days because she's thinking about it for multiple days. It's really
Got
funny.
it.
She's
Okay, I
like,
get
she
it.
just hears someone say Oedipus, Oedipus, like calling their kid, and she's like, do they know? I mean, they have to know.
No,
How could
no.
you? It's like,
What?
but why
That's
would
what it's
you?
about?
Yeah, she's just her, like this woman walking around thinking about like, but like if she didn't know, how would you know the name?
Right. It's not a common name
And just
at
like,
all.
yeah, just like her being baffled for multiple days. And sometimes she's just sitting there, it's like still thinking about baby edifice.
Oh my God, that's so disturbing.
Yeah, Perseus, yeah, like you said, and
Sure.
it makes sense. Also, Echidna's possibly the mother of the Nemean lion, which Hercules killed in his first labor, depicted as Scar in the Disney movie. You know,
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I remember.
Do you remember that? It was 84 years.
It's been a long time.
All right. So let's talk about our characters. Percy is like, do they say his age in this one?
Think so, but
He's
I'd say he's
very
probably like
much,
seventh grade.
yeah, he's like he's the age I was when I dressed as Perseus.
Love
He's
that.
he's definitely like pre-high school.
Yeah.
Remember, it's like high school without the musical. Okay, sorry, I can't keep reference.
That's good. Yeah, so like all of the main characters who, were meant to be kids are actually kids, which is
Yeah,
great. But yeah, he's just a little bean.
yeah, yeah, he's just
He's getting
lost. He's
hella
stressed.
bullied.
He's
Like
getting
it's
bullied.
very clear what his situation is. Over the first episode, I guess maybe the first half of the episode, they do a really great job of introducing his past, his setting, and his relationship with his mom.
Which is so
Very
key.
good.
The series is very economical. Like all the
Yes.
like they are able because the fear sometimes I have when they adapt a book series into a TV show is people like we have all the time in the world
Right.
until we don't have time to edit out the Starbucks cups. But those VFX people were probably so overworked. Let me just
Mm-hmm.
clarify. No hate to
Yeah.
them, but so as someone who has a friend who works in VFX and how
Yeah.
brutal that can be, uh so they're like, it's just the book is very economical in that way, where it's able to convey a lot with a little. And but books
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit more room, but TV's tight and they stick to that tightness where it's like things
Yeah.
are moving, but you're like, okay, I get it. I'm picking it up.
They're like standard, if you had commercials on 60-minute episodes, but it's 40 minutes of content,
Yeah. And
like
they have
and less.
those like commercial break moments. And I'm like, oh no, it's Disney Plus adding an ad tier.
I know that's what I got worried about too.
In the movie, they're horny teens, but in this, they're children and they act like children, like very brave children. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
on this journey by themselves. It's scary. So they're being very brave about it. They're not being like babies, but it's also like, wow, these are kids.
Yeah, it makes the stakes feel so much more real. It's like you can't forget that they're kids because they look like kids. And it's also like, because if you think about like the situations, like the Medusa situation in the movie is like really silly and
Yeah.
ridiculous. But in the show, like it's more harrowing because I'm like, oh my God, these are 12-year-olds.
And it
Or I
is
guess
like
Grover's 24, but
it's 24. Yeah. But it's like it's very
which is a great line, by the way.
yeah.
I think that comes up like while he's in the car and Percy has just found out that, all this stuff about him being a demigod, he's on the way to camp, that scene. And just like all this is going around, and there's like a little bit of silence. And Grover goes, "Yeah, I'm 24." So
they
good.
it's yeah, it's like, and they play him still very young. It's just very it's much closer to the book. So if we're gonna go over basically, like we're not doing like a full plot synopsis because it's
Mhm,
basically the book, but like episode one is we meet Percy. It's up until the Minotaur attack where he loses his mother and he goes to camp. And
mhm,
then episode two is like welcome to camp, all the stuff with Clarisse and meeting Annabeth and being claimed by Poseidon. And then episode
mhm,
three, he's going on the quest, the run in with Medusa, and then the run with the Furies. And then episode four is the train
St.
and the trip to
Louis.
St. Louis.
Mhm,
Yeah, so that's just kind of like our basic. We talked about all those events in the
mhm.
Percy Jackson episode we did with overly sarcastic productions, but
I guess another thing about Percy is the way they introduce him to the world and introduce us to the world, it's slower than it is in the movie, obviously. And I think they do it really well where like he's fighting back on a lot of things, but it's not too much where it's just like we get exhausted by it, or we're just like, okay, well, why would we buy into this? He does have those moments of like, this is crazy.
yeah.
But they still feel very realistic.
Yeah, he's still doing his best to kind of go along with it, but then being like, wait, no, what? Without it
Yeah.
being like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, because
Yeah.
that does drag things down sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say similar to Narnia, where like the
Mm,
kids kind of adapt pretty quickly to like what's good.
yeah.
Susan, everyone's one is like, what the fuck? But it's not like she's standing there like, I can't believe this. She is like interacting.
Yeah. And they get moments where it's like kind of funny that, Susan's like, did that
He's a
bird just
beaver.
at
Yeah.
us?
He's a
Um,
beaver. He shouldn't be saying anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Percy, he does have those moments. Like Grover comes in, we haven't seen him from the waist down yet. And Percy's just staring at him going, Grover, Grover. Like it's a
Yeah.
little funny moment where it's like he's still trying to accept what's happening.
Why do you have a goat in your pants?
That's
And that's
a funny line.
when my husband walked in and was like, what are
What?
you watching? You watched
Uh,
that line. I was like, it makes sense in context.
yeah, exactly.
I think they use Percy's position as an outsider really well. I think this
Hmm.
because he really sometimes with you when you have an outsider story, it's you're so wrong about everything. Learn about the hidden world, and everyone else is right. And they have that a bit with Annabeth, but how they prevent it from being like cliche is it's like, and a very smart way to adapt Greek mythology is he points out how shitty a lot of things are, or like that's not right. Like they shouldn't treat you like that, or like
Hmm.
I like my dad didn't show up for me. Like he doesn't care that he's a god.
Yeah.
He is a normal person. He's invested in the people who care about him. And like they do some cool stuff with like Grover and their friendship and Grover kind of disobeying orders because of his friendship with Percy. So kind of like the ripple
Hmm.
effect. He goes to the Satyr Enclave to be like, "What's going on? Can we get Sally back?" Which I thought
Yeah.
such a good friend move. I do really love
Hmm.
Grover in this.
Yeah, I do
He's
too.
tag yourself. Like that was me as a preteen, like trying to sing the song like to get along. His
Yeah.
consensus song and like guys stop fighting. It's like that was me.
Oh,
Yeah. Sally and the relationship with his
yeah.
mom. So much better. Like,
It's so clear. I mean, I think doesn't the show start with there's a little bit of VO, right? And then it's
yeah.
him with his mom looking at the statues. Like that's one of the
Yeah.
early scenes. And she's explaining that story about Perseus and his mom and basically being like, hold fast, being
Mhm.
encouraging. And then when he gets kicked out of school, she okay, I do quickly want to talk about when he comes home from getting kicked out of school
Yeah.
because Grover kind of betrayed him as a way to get him kicked out of school, which I thought, I don't know if that happens in the book exactly, but like I was like, wow, that's
Yeah.
intense. Like
Yeah, there
that's
was he
as a
felt
kid, that's probably an intense feeling. I mean, it's an intense
yeah.
feeling for anyone that like,
But
wow,
yeah, to
your
have
best
your
friend just ratted me
friend,
out.
yeah. Even though
Yeah.
it is revealed later that it's otherwise Percy would have been killed.
Yeah. So he comes home and he's, confronting his Ugliano dude. And she's like really enjoying the rain. And I'm
Yeah.
like, is this meant to be like her kind of like communing with Poseidon because of the
Yeah.
water cycle? And I'm like, this is a little freaky.
Ooh.
But she immediately hugs him, and she's, because she, you know, she knows what's going on that he doesn't,
Yeah.
but also she's like, I believe my kid. I believe
Yeah.
you.
That you didn't push her.
Yeah, like I think they spend more time in the show on Percy's relationship with his mom, and in the movie they spend more time on like the weird relationship with like Percy's mom and her husband. Like they want to
Yeah.
emphasize that a little more in the movie, but like yeah,
The
it's very well done.
Yeah, because they definitely there's more time in the book on that home life, but I think they're like we only have time to do so many things, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think his relationship with his mom and the love that they feel is so central and so fueling. And I think the movie sometimes does this thing that it's like the Christopher Nolan thing where, I like Memento, but I'm a bit of a Nolan hater. I'm sorry. I know he has his
Mm-hmm.
we all can like what we like, but like the thing where it's like a woman is dead and they serve as motivation, but it doesn't really matter who that woman is and what the relationship is. She's just kind of a dead woman to
Right.
fight for. And in this, like the book, what I really liked, and this creates it, is like you feel that relationship and that love that she has, and like how she can be very sacrificing and also very feisty, and just like they have this deep bond where she's always there for him.
That's what he's fighting for.
Yeah, and so and you need that elevates the whole story because he doesn't care about these gods and their little diddly daddly
He
whatever.
doesn't care about that lightning bolt.
Yeah, it's like he's here for his mom, and that's what makes Percy like so relatable and likable is he's not like driven by like a blind faith in a god that has not been there for him. He's
Mm-hmm.
driven by love for a parent who has been there for him.
Yeah.
And they are
Well,
able to, there's again, it's a book is longer, there's more time on it, but they're able to convey that same feeling I felt in a
oh yeah.
shorter time. In the movie there is no concept of the mist, which they
Mm-hmm.
bring back in the show, like the veil between the human world and the magical mythical world.
But they don't
Uh
dwell on it, which is what I like.
yeah,
Is
because
it
it's
they
a
spend like
mythical
maybe
concept. It doesn't need to be
30
like
seconds talking about it in like the first episode when he's like, yeah, you can't see my legs because of the mist. You know, you couldn't see no one could see what was happening with you in the Fury because of the mist. And that was it. And then like from then on, the reminders are like in the St. Louis episode, you know, we know that Chimera is coming, you know, it's in a
mhm,
little dog cage. But when the family that's in the car, that's like, they just, she's looks and it's just like a little dog.
yeah.
Like that's the mist happening. Like, and then we can see a couple seconds later, just things being thrown around behind the police officers who are about to be attacked by this thing. So it's like they
It's
show us, they don't
yeah.
tell us, they don't dwell on it, and they didn't completely ignore it or like muddle it. Like it's very well done.
It's so simple, and that's to me what a great like magic rule or system is, where it's simple,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to convey, and
Mm-hmm.
like you don't have to get into like too many. It's like I'm sure someone can be like, here's a plot hole, but as anyone who watched our Beauty and the Beast series knows, those dumb little plot hole things, waste of
Mm-hmm.
time. It's like this is like a great, like straightforward system. It works.
And
And
it
like
explains so much so quickly.
as the story gets bigger, I don't know if they did do more with the mist or not, but like it's just a simple way to be like, this exists in our world, but it's still our regular world. This is why you don't see it. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do that a little bit with the what is Chiron?
A centaur.
Centaur. They do it with the centaurs. They see the centaurs sort of running in the wild when they're on the train. And it's like, yeah, humans, but we can see them. Humans can't, you know.
Yeah.
But again, very simple.
There
Um,
is, I do want to say, no one has ever done centaurs as good as those Chronicles of Narnia movies. Did not expect them to come up that much in this episode, but I do think
yeah,
those are the best looking centaurs I've ever seen. in the
Mm.
like Walden Media
You're just
Disney
partial
centaurs.
because you're like friends with one of the centaurs.
Yes,
Like
because
whatever.
the one who shot the phoenix, just to clarify, yeah.
Just to clarify, very important centaur.
Yeah. I mean, I love that
Um,
fun fact, but yes. No,
yeah.
I think they centaurs I think are very hard to make look not weird.
I think it's fine. It's
Yeah, it's
definitely better than
fine.
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah.
However, I don't know if I buy it with that like business coat he has on. It's a
Yeah.
little weird. Like I wish he had a different outfit on. That's
Yeah.
my only criticism.
And I guess we can use that. We can talk about camp a little bit. Uh
Yeah. Chiron is not the only adult here. We also have Dionysus, played by the wonderful Jason Mantzoukas. I did not read the book or listen to the book. I don't know anything about this Mr. G character except for what we talked about with Red. But seeing that Jason Mantzoukas has been cast as this character, I'm like, I know everything I need to know. It's perfect. It's great
yeah, like
casting.
he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm your dad. Go get me some
He's
wine."
gonna be he's gonna be a little bit of comedic relief.
Mhm.
And I think Red had explained it that like Mr. D kind of makes it seem like he doesn't care about these kids, but he cares actually very deeply.
Mhm.
He just doesn't show it. And I think Jason Mantzoukas is a great person to characterize that. So yeah, that's one big thing about camp.
The cabins are like, oh look, these are the cabins of all the different gods.
Mm-hmm.
Luke it very much reads as like still a kid but older.
Yeah.
Like very much showing Percy the ropes. There's we see a cool dryad. No nymph erasure here. We've seen
Oh,
multiple nymphs in the first 4 episodes.
yeah.
Because you also see a Nereid in episode 4, who's a different design, like watery and ethereal. Interesting. I love their design choices.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about camp is in the movie, was Percy in the same cabin as Luke?
They don't really know
They
because
don't really
they're
explain
immediately
it,
like you're Poseidon's son.
right?
Where
Isn't
in
that what
this,
happens?
yeah, in this he has to be
They
claimed.
right. So in the movie, he finds out that he was Poseidon's son and then he gets claimed, right?
Yeah,
Or
or
no, he
they,
doesn't
they
get
just
claimed.
take him to that fancy cabin, I feel like.
Right. I can't
I feel
remember
like
how
the
it
camp stuff
happened.
is so short in the movie.
Yeah. So this like made a lot more sense in the show. It was like they explained the rules. And also I think it makes it more clear that sort of struggle of like some kids have been claimed, other kids haven't. And so that could kind of present sort of like a hierarchy or just like those feelings of being like, I've been abandoned. How come other people have been claimed by their
Yeah.
parents? Or it's really interesting. And those kind of like social politics don't really exist in the movie.
And it's sad and it captures that kind of
Mm-hmm.
sadness of a lot of Greek. There's a reason it's called a Greek
Greek
tragedy, right?
tragedy.
Like
Yeah.
like, oh, like the gods aren't these like benevolent, similar to like the Abrahamic
Yeah.
tradition or a lot of like Buddhist tradition. Like it's not like but the world is run by a benevolent force. It's like a
Right.
neutral, very impersonal, not like very personal, but not morally, like not your personal Jesus or your inner goddess, like 50 Shades of Grey, like a very like people that can be shitty, people that can be nice to people that can
Yeah.
be shitty. It's like, and so some of these kids don't want to be part of this world, but they are, and then their parents never claim them, and they just have to spend their whole life like that.
Yeah. The other thing about camp is that they do have a little bit of religiosity in that they do offerings to the gods
Yeah.
and like to try to like send communications to the gods, pray. Which I thought was kind of interesting because that comes up with Annabeth, who puts on this front that like she's close with her mom, or she has a very strong bond with her
Hmm.
mom, but then we find out she doesn't.
Yeah, she has
Um,
like one cap, you know.
yeah, and so that's just really interesting.
We
Yeah.
meet Annabeth here, and I think they did like she's great. She's
Mm-hmm.
very much a good contrast to Percy. If he's a little doofus, like she knows what she's doing.
Yes, and that was some, and they make it very clear that she is skilled and effective in the way that a daughter of Athena should be.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movie they do not make that clear at all.
In the movie, she's
Um,
nothing.
yeah, she's literally just something pretty to look at, and
And this Annabeth is more than just like, oh, I'm tough. Like she's a little ruthless.
she's thinking.
Yeah.
Like the Medusa scene, I didn't actually pick up on it at first. Like one of the reasons why Annabeth doesn't want to go in there is because the potential beef between her, because she's
Yeah.
Athena's daughter, and Medusa. And once they mentioned that, I was like, oh, that's really good. Like she's probably thinking about that.
Yeah. She
And she's
knows
the one who
her
figures
homework.
out, she figures out that it's, what does Auntie M stand for? Duh.
Yeah.
Like Medusa. Yeah, like she's incredibly smart. And this is something that I think like is really important to the show that is not in the movie, is that Annabeth is a complete asset. Like she's a big asset to their team,
Yeah.
whereas like she was not in the movie.
They like it was the personalities were boy, girl, and horny in the movie.
Yeah.
And like if we were gonna talk about the kids, like Grover, like he's is I wonder if that drives his mom, which I love. I don't know, like where she's like, your horns, you're itching them. But like
Yeah.
he is passionate about animals and he doesn't like to see when animals are hurt. He cares about
Mhm.
nature. They mention the whole thing of the god Pan being missing and his uncle
Yes.
going on the quest to find him. And like he is, instead of being just horny all the time,
He
he's
actually has depth.
yeah. And he's so sweet and caring. And that's just the Grover in the book, because the Grover in the movie was so different.
Yeah, it's so strange. Like how different that it's like almost like deeply upsetting.
Yeah, I mean I feel like
Um
the Grover in the movie is based on Coach Phil from Hercules. Like what if we
yeah.
had a young Coach Phil? And
Yeah.
he said it's like high school without the musical. Which I mean
uh
the people keep talking about in the comment section, the Clarisse, the line, the or not Clarisse, Freudian
mm,
slip, Annabeth, the
well,
line that I have strong feelings about you. I haven't decided if they're positive or negative yet. Just with speaking of
uh
Clarisse,
yeah,
well
she's
cast.
here.
She's here. She's an older bully.
She's
Like she's a tough kid and she's
mhm.
yeah,
I mean, they go to do a swirly on him. I was like, oh, we're going old
old
school.
school.
But I guess
Which
they're
I
not allowed
do
to
think
maim people. So,
Swirly is the ultimate evil of bullying.
I
I
mean,
I
it's
agree. I feel like
waterboarding, right?
yeah, there's just all the other things like you can get over,
Like
but
a
a
wedgie.
swirly, yeah, like a wedgie, you just gotta fix it. It just hurts, you know. But like a swirly, that's like
Never been swirlied.
disgusting. I think it
I'm
takes a
very
special
fortunate.
level of evil to do that to someone. Because it also takes a
Yeah.
large amount of physical force. It's
Yeah.
not stealth, it's like pure force. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you
Um,
swirlied someone, comment below and apologize to them.
yeah. Yeah. Pay
You
your
owe them
penance
that.
here.
Yeah. Sacrifice to the
Um,
gods. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh
so in the show, Clarisse is her own person, Annabeth is her own person. I don't know, like, is this Annabeth still somewhat faithful to the book? Would you
yeah.
say? Okay,
Yeah, I think
so
the like
I
she's
can see,
definitely a little I think the book might veer closer to a Hermione.
right.
I think she's played a little less goody two shoes. I wouldn't want to call Annabeth goody two shoes, but she's played a little tougher, which makes
Hmm.
sense. Not
Yeah.
that and I'm sure people could quibble about the characterization. Just going off of like my memory of the book Annabeth, is I think this Annabeth plays into the ruthlessness of her a little more, like her devotion to
Hmm.
her goal. Like she's not a
Yes.
cruel or unkind person, but she's
Mm-mm.
very focused on her
Driven.
goal and driven, and it does so in
Mhm.
a way that you get exactly why she is the way she is.
Yeah. And I can see why the people who were producing the movie were like, let's just lump Annabeth and Clarisse together because they both are, they're not
Strong
super
women.
soft. Yes,
Yeah.
they're not super soft. So they're automatically the same person. That's just going to be easier for us.
Yeah,
So
it's like
I get the choice now. I
it's
get the
like the
decision.
Thor movies combining the two major goddesses of Norse mythology into one figure.
Yeah.
Can't have two.
No.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen those movies. I'm gonna die mad about that.
Well, we're gonna have to watch them
I'm gonna
eventually.
yeah.
At least though, I
Justice
think
for
those will be
Freya. Yeah,
the only ones that only like Marvel movies that we'll really even have to watch,
maybe
I
Black
think.
Panther. I think there's some mythology in that. I feel like that's at least also
I
like
haven't
a
seen Black Panther
cultural
movie in a long
touchstone.
time.
Yeah.
True. Oh, and we also have to talk about Madame Web, right?
That's not the truth, Hannah.
Yeah.
Morpheus.
Okay, no, but we have to talk about Morbius. I'm so excited.
No, no, no.
Oh, that movie is like probably my favorite one of my favorite bad movies, just because it's so easy to make fun of. Anyway, back to the show. But yeah, Clarisse is scary.
Yeah, and he breaks her
Uh,
weapon and she's really mad because it's a gift from her dad.
which is that's such a powerful moment. Like, obviously, I'm like, oh, Clarisse, she's so mean. I don't like her, but I feel that because, like, obviously, she's mean because she's going through stuff. We know this about bullies.
Her dad's the god of war, who
Yeah,
everyone agreed sucked in the Greek pantheon. So it's not like he's next to saints.
yeah, and so like that's a bond to have something like that from your parent.
Yeah. And then because
Um,
it's like she's getting her just desserts because she's trying to bully this kid because she's like,
yeah,
you're not all that. And who's much smaller and younger than her and inexperienced. But it's
yeah.
also, and then when that turns on her, it's like such a like moment of like humiliation.
And actually, to go back, speaking of bullies, so we know, sort of how like Percy has reacted to his bullies. Like he
Mm.
did, but did not push that girl into a fountain. He's had people,
Yeah.
like call him names and stuff, or like kind of like beat up on Grover. And when he gets to camp, like he goes into the cabin and like Luke and a couple other guys are walking over and Percy stands up. He's like, you know what? If you're gonna mess with me, can you just like give me a day to just chill and then do it tomorrow? And they're like, no, like we're chill. Like
Sorry
we
about your
just wanted
mom.
sorry about your mom. Yeah. And so it's like, and he like legitimately reacts to that. And then he's like, oh, okay, I can kind of relax. Like these people get me.
Yeah. This
So
kid
that's
also
also like a really nice
cares
moment.
that his mom died.
Yeah,
That's just like,
exactly.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Clarisse does not. She's literally like, oh yeah, you killed a minotaur. Okay,
Yeah.
you're a liar. But doesn't he have a horn as proof? I don't know.
Yeah. She's a bully.
Bullies don't care about the truth.
And I guess like before we get into just the overall like things, the Medusa, how they tackle the Medusa story. I mean,
Oh
all the
yeah.
monsters, it's great. Like Megan Mullally is such a fun
Yeah.
Fury. I do like
Yeah,
Echidna and Chimera. Like I thought that was funny.
I wrote in here that in the show, Percy does use the head to save him and his friends from Karen Walker from Will and Grace. Because that's what she is.
So with Medusa, they really update the story and she's has sympathy for them because she's like, I don't like bullies. And she
Yeah.
sees the gods as bullies. Like she's like, I prayed so hard to Athena. I loved her and I heard nothing. And then when I found a god who listened and who cared, it embarrassed her.
Mm-hmm.
I was an embarrassment. She cursed, or she gave me a gift to protect bullies. And Annabeth is like, no, she cursed you. And she's like, oh, you're the like, first she's like, we're not our parents. And then she's like, you're the self-righteous daughter of a self-righteous mother. But she's like, we're
Mm-hmm.
the same. Like Athena, like I was you. I had that devotion. And then she says to Percy, she's like, your mom and I are like sisters in a way because she's like, how? And it's like, well, did Poseidon stand up for me?
Mm.
It's like, where's your mom now? And she's like, the harpy or the fury. Sorry to the three-titted harpy from the last unicorn. The fury says to Annabeth, like, oh, like I'll take, like, give me Percy and I'll help you. And then Medusa is like, hey, sacrifice Grover and Annabeth, they'll stop you, and I'll help you get your mom. And he won't
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice his friends. Because there's a lot with like they have the full prophecy that he's gonna be
The Oracle.
betrayed.
Yeah.
He brings Annabeth partially because she knows she will stop him if he like to make the quest happen, but Grover because he trusts Grover as his friend.
Yeah.
And
And
Grover makes them
that's
talk it out, and I do love that.
yeah. And I think it's also an important thing is like because they start off where like Annabeth is like, I'm in charge, probably because I
Yeah.
have the most experience, which is like valid. But Percy has this great line where like they're trying to like he's trying to get the vote started, get out
Yeah.
and vote. And he literally goes, I think the voting system's broken. And then it ends on that. And I was like, what a great button line.
What a great. I mean,
Um,
he's funny because like they're talking about, oh, and he turned Zeus turned Talia into a tree, and he's
he's like,
like, she got the fate of a pine cone. He's the most powerful being in the universe, and that's all he could do.
yeah. And that's also, yeah, there's some really great humor in this. It's kind of
Yeah.
dry, and that just makes it like so much better.
And it's so
Um,
I like how it critiques the gods, which is definitely in the book, but like how Medusa,
yes.
you're kind of like, she's only saying the truth. Like she may be a
Yeah.
little evil, but it's also like, is she even that evil?
And it's
Uh
forcing Annabeth and also Grover to an extent because he's sort of like a
mhm,
servant to them or a
yeah.
helper, I should say. Well, no, I mean he is forced to clean up
Clean
horse
poop.
poop.
Yeah.
But so who has this devotion for her mom, even though she has every right to be angry, or maybe she secretly does feel angry, but she also does have devotion to
Yeah.
hide it, you know. It's challenging them to think differently about the system that they're in. And it's like there's so much more depth to these
Yes. And he does
characters.
not just do the classic, let's make the gods a stand-in for Christianity, whether you like or dislike Christianity, that so
Yeah.
many of the basically almost every other mythology movie we will talk about does.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these are the Greek gods with their specific issues. And because
Yeah.
Perseus mails Medusa's head to the gods, and they're like, that's impertinent. And he's like, I am impertinent. And the Paragua guy from I almost said It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What is that movie? Hamilton and In the Heights. I think I don't forget.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
He's Hermes, and he takes that package of Medusa's head up to
Oh, I guess I
Olympus.
didn't realize he was Hermes.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't put that together.
Yeah,
Um,
and he
so then that means he's Luke's dad.
yeah, and when they're
Okay, right,
in
right.
St. Louis, they don't get sanctuary because Athena is mad that Annabeth embarrassed her.
Yes,
And
and
that's
that's
so it's in track with how she treated Medusa, and it's cruel and unfair.
yeah, it is. It's fucked up.
And that's
Yeah.
why who knows if it'll ever go up on YouTube. I'm trying to get it to happen, and maybe it's lost to time. My actual play, Percy Jackson's spoof sort of series, Camp Oracle. The main
Yeah.
antagonist is the daughter of Athena, and which is she's introduced in the first episode. It's not like a spoiler.
Yeah.
She sucks. But it's like she kind of has that like self-centered, self-righteous attitude. So she was
Mhm.
not really a play on Annabeth at all, more of a play on Athena. I have opinions about Athena. If you want
Really.
a feminist goddess, go to Artemis. Like she's a dick
uh
sometimes, but they're all dicks sometimes.
yeah, they're gods.
Yeah.
Um I do want to quickly point out that I was going to search for something for like Camp Half Blood as my background and I typed Camp Oracle instead. So you should
Wow.
be proud.
Thank you.
So speaking of tone, I came to the realization watching the show that the movie was incredibly campy. It
Hmm.
was very like saturated with not even just like this sort of adult humor, but like I felt like it didn't take the premise of he's a demigod, he's getting this lightning bolt to stop, the end of the world,
Yeah.
and he's saving his mom. Like I feel like it didn't take that seriously at all.
No.
So
It was just like, we're going to hell.
yeah, this
Highway to
highway to
hell.
hell.
Here's horny Rosario Dawson. Here's three dogs instead of Cerberus.
It's literally like it's so refreshing.
This is
Like
what
it gives
happens.
it the weight it needs to
Yeah.
get us to buy into the story.
It
Because on
doesn't.
a surface level, it is a crazy idea for a story,
Yeah.
but it becomes good when your story, whatever medium you're telling it in, takes it seriously. That's
You
what you really need.
you embrace it. And so the modern and the mythical don't clash as much as you think they do. It's like they
Yes.
have enough of a blend. The mist, I think, allows for there to be like there's the modern view of things, there's the magical side,
Mm-hmm.
and the clash isn't it so weird? Old-timey gods. The good I mean, at one point
Yeah.
he's like, wait, I'm the son of Jesus. Percy says something like
Yeah.
just uh but
Well,
it's
that's also a great moment where it's like, no, 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 we are not Christianifying
yeah.
these gods. Like,
but it's the clashes between the ideologies. I
Yes.
mean, we talk a lot because we talk a lot about myth and fairy tale, and I do think, even though they're similar, like the core philosophies behind a fairy tale and a myth they're almost opposite, I would typically say. I would
Hmm.
say mythology does lean a lot more patriarchal. I know we think of fairy tales as pretty patriarchal these days, but there's a lot more female voices. Women's, like, whether or not women are happy with whatever's happening to them is a lot more considered in fairy
Hmm.
tales. And there's also fairy tales have a system of where, like, good will be rewarded, like good
Hmm.
behavior, like the world is, I'm referring specifically to like your Western fairy tales, that good will be rewarded and the universe is run by some kind of benevolent God. And now I'm talking big overarching, like there's exceptions to all these rules, and even Cupid and Psyche, a myth, I would slot into a fairy tale, like in its philosophy. But myths are also as equally interesting, and they have like this idea of like fighting for like tooth and claw to like get to where you need to go, and then
Hmm.
not necessarily uncaring, but like the gods aren't concerned with what's kind, what's right, what's like follow the rule. It's like it's a tough world. And I think
Yeah.
Percy Jackson series contrasts like modern understanding of like what parents owe their children, like what is
Hmm.
right, like like what we think of as right in society that has gone through a lot more of history than ancient Greece.
Yeah.
And contrasting that with gods who haven't quite upgraded. Their
Yeah.
philosophies are kind of backwards for our perspective. We don't consider their behavior ethical.
Right.
And I think that's a
Or
way more
we don't
interesting
consider it
clash.
godlike
God,
in a
like,
lot of
yeah,
Western society because of Christianity and
yeah,
stuff and God's
yeah.
benevolence.
That's a much more interesting clash than like togas and sandal. What? You know,
Yeah.
it's like, and it doesn't, I think the 2010s sometimes, well, I don't know. I think sometimes people think audiences are dumb.
Right.
And this show isn't dumbing things down even though it's for a younger audience. It's not
Hmm.
dumbing things down. It thinks kids are smart and can understand all these different nuances. So I
Hmm.
think kids are smart, and it's also not dull for adults, and
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
horned up.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I say this
um
as someone who watched Riverdale. I have no ethical issues with things being horned up, but not everything needs to be horned up
especially when it was not horned up to
because
begin with.
because it was written with a 12-year-old protagonist.
Yeah, and like there's like no reason to do that.
Yeah,
I kind of want to like end on the overall pacing, and that
yeah,
like you already had sort of broken down like these are the sort of the main moments of the book that are put into the show, or I guess also in the movie put
hmm,
into the show. But we'll kind of talk about this, I think, in our second Supernatural Romance Month episode. I feel like the late knots and
hmm,
the 2010s were all about franchises, especially
yeah,
after the success of Harry Potter
yeah,
and like movie franchises specifically. And now I think we're in an era where we want to take content and split it into a show that we can tell over multiple seasons and that we can tell in, longer bursts, maybe 8 to 12 episodes a season kind of thing.
yeah.
And I think Percy Jackson, not even just as rich as it is, but also as complex as the lore that it's pulling from is, and sort of how it wants to operate that lore and play around with it. I think it definitely needed a series
Yeah.
because thinking about how to structure that into a movie and to make it still have the same kind of depth, I think would be pretty difficult
It
for a,
yeah.
a 2 hour movie.
I I
So, yeah.
I think you're 100% right because, Greek mythology is like the MCU of religions. It's like this
Yes.
wide, sprawling universe with different storylines and timelines, and different characters have different characterizations and different stories.
Yeah.
And I think there are very few mythology movies I think of as good, and it's
Yeah.
because it's so hard to, I think, to capture all
Mm-hmm.
that complexity and nuance in a movie, because you have to explain who these people, you either have to explain who they are, or you're not explaining it and expecting people to get it. And that which is like that gaslighting that Marvel does, where they're like, this alien race, you know who they are. And I'm like, what? I don't know. And it's like this, it's complicated. And so to tell it more serialized gives you the space. And I wonder if that's why, like, there's no mythology movie I really love, is because it's so hard to convey. Whereas when you
And
do like a fairy tale, like you maybe have to explain like how one spell works or like one simple setup, but like everything else, we're kind of like, yeah, okay.
and at a certain point with fairy tales, there's a popular consciousness of what this fairy tale is
Yeah.
about, and you can kind of play with it and let audiences be like, oh, okay, that's different from what I know.
Yeah.
But
This
with
is the
Greek
one with
mythology,
the
with
girl in a tower,
Egyptian mythology, like, I don't know, like, again, like, you tried to quiz me on whatever the names of the Olympic gods were. I was like, like, I know names, I know very little. And I feel like that's probably the majority of the popular consciousness, is that we don't know a lot of, like, about Medusa. Like, we know, like, we
Yeah.
could describe what she is.
Yeah.
So I think, like, you're wrestling with popular consciousness of very complex mythology, and you're also twisting it. So yeah, I think the series, like, if we want to get into whether that was your fantasy, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say yeah, it's a fun
Yes.
show. I probably would not have watched it if we didn't decide to do it for for the podcast, or
Same. And I'm glad I
regardless of,
did. Yeah.
even if we didn't have this podcast, I probably would have never been interested because I saw the movie. But yeah, I'm glad that we're watching it because it's fun. Like, I find myself
Yeah.
genuinely laughing, and I
The
also,
visuals, we didn't touch on the monster design visuals a lot. They're really good. They're really
yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're
interesting.
gonna have a lot more monsters to talk about next episode, because I'm thinking, like, oh yeah, like, we haven't even met, like, Cerberus,
Yeah, there's the Chimera, there's the Minotaur, and it's very different, but they're very well done monsters. And
Yeah,
it you feel immersed in this world, and it doesn't feel too CGI heavy either.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I'm not someone who really complains about that unless, like, it looks bad, but, like,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's really solid. Like, if you haven't watched it yet, if you are at all a fan of Percy Jackson, or if you're not and you're
And
like,
if
I
you
saw that
like,
movie, it was bad, like, I would
yeah,
recommend, like, just watch the first episode. Like, you'll probably be
yeah,
like, okay, now I want to see episode 2, because they're very well paced, well structured, well written, great acting.
yeah. If
Yeah,
you
it's
like
great.
mythology, if you like fantasy stories, like coming of age kind of stuff, this is great. This is like very much fits in with like
Mhm.
things like, I mean, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but things like Harry Potter or Chronicles of Narnia or,
Right.
other stories. But yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that was my fantasy.
Yeah.
This is like the adventure I wanted to have when I was 12.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I
No,
would
I
have,
didn't
but
want my
actually,
mom to die, but like this is like this story that you read as a kid and you're like, what if this was me? Like what would I do? Would I send
yeah.
Medusa's head? You know?
I mean, I have the opposite opinion like that. Is I wouldn't actually want to picture myself in the situation, because I think the show and probably the book are very effective in making this situation very scary.
It's not
That,
wish
like,
fulfillment. It's not like
no,
imagine if everyone loved you and you were so cool. It's like,
this is insane. I could die at any time, because
yeah,
I remember,
now
like, Red
back to
talking about
me
that in the book.
screaming. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, I probably would not picture myself in that situation,
Yeah.
because it's very
It's
effective,
scary. Yeah.
even, like,
And
as a kid, I would be like, oh, like, this is great to read, but I'm like, man, I'm glad that's not me.
not me.
I
Yeah, and
don't
you
want to be a
did.
demigod.
I talked over it a bit, but you mentioned how Red mentioned that a lot in the about the book,
Yeah.
and I do think
And
this
that
conveys
stuck with
that.
me, because I always thought, like, oh, it's like Harry Potter, you want to be a wizard, you want to be a demigod. No, you don't.
No,
And
and
I'm
that
I'm
is the
glad
I
that's an essence in the
yeah, I
show
think
and
that is
in the
the
book.
key difference between this and Harry Potter. Like if you had to be like explain
Yeah.
what makes them different, and one is that one is, which we will talk about Harry Potter someday, but like one is like a more of a wish fulfillment, and one is imagine this world that's cool, but like also you would not want to be a part of. It seems
Yeah.
cool, but it's not.
Well, because, again, we can talk about it, but the inherent difference is, being a wizard is not always going to kill you. Being a demigod, you are always in danger.
Yeah.
And there's no stopping that.
Hmm.
Like, it's literally just not possible to stop.
Yeah. You can't
So,
hang out at camp your whole life. You got to grow up.
Yeah, and then you have to, so check it out.
Check it
And
out.
you can check out our part two, probably end of February is when we're going to publish it, because we want to get through Supernatural Romance Month, which
Yes.
starts in a couple days after this episode comes out. What are we talking about,
We
Cullen?
will be talking about the seminal classic, the one of the most iconic films of all time. My the movie with my favorite salad bowl smashing scene.
Yeah.
We were talking about Twilight, the movie
Mm-hmm.
I was named after. Yes, I was born in 2008. We have four movies that we'll be talking about, all with different supernatural creatures.
One of
Uh,
them is a brand new movie that's
Brand
coming out
spanking
in
new.
theaters around Valentine's Day. So if you
So,
pay attention to releases, you can might be able to figure
yeah.
out what it is.
So we're exploring classic literature, like Twilight. No, like
Yeah.
so like all kinds of monster lore. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really fun. And we've already recorded our Twilight episode, and it was so much fun. There is just so much to talk about with Twilight and
Mm-hmm.
vampires in general. And it
Mm-hmm.
was actually my first time seeing it. So if you want, I love like there are so many videos where it's like first time watching this, and it was my
Literally.
first time watching Twilight. So
Yeah. So you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for some extra content at Not My Fantasy Pod. Definitely follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. Leave us a 5-star review so that we know what you love about the podcast and so we can find awesome listeners just like you. And smash the like button on this
smash
video.
smash that like button.
If you want to get notified for when that episode comes out, smash that subscribe button because
Yeah.
you will get notified if you hit that bell
Mhm.
notification. It's
Comment
exciting.
below. Comment below if you've given someone a swirly, apologizing to them.
Yes.
And if not, let us know which god you would want to be your parent and why. Like, which is the least awful choice
Ooh. Okay. I think, Cullen, we should come prepared for part two with
with
that answer
our.
for ourselves.
Okay.
So that means I have to do some extra research.
I
That's
think
okay.
you have to pick a. I'm gonna say a Greco-Roman, but if you're like, but I also have a feeling about this other deity. You
Uh-huh.
know, we're
Hathor,
open.
please.
We're open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pick who you would like to be claimed by.
Yeah. As Arwen
Yeah.
says, if you want him, come and claim him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff from Liv Tyler. All right. See you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.